This tea that I bought was put on a head-to-head trial with Captopril and was just as effective as the starting dose of Captopril. Hi friends, maybe you've been told that your high blood pressure doesn't count because you have white coat syndrome. For years, doctors have brushed off something called white coat syndrome, that sudden spike of high blood pressure at the doctor's office, as harmless. Well, guess what? They've been proven to be wrong. Too many walk around with dangerously high blood pressure, either unaware or thinking it's no big deal, only to suffer life-altering consequences later on. Now today, we're uncovering the truth about blood pressure, the myths, the mistakes, the foods, and the real science behind keeping it in check. Now, if you put the right effort, you can lower your blood pressure naturally within a matter of days, actually within a matter of minutes. Don't believe me? Take a look at this screenshot. In around 30 minutes, my friend did one thing that dropped her systolic blood pressure by almost 40 points. Interested? Stick around. This information will be life-changing. What should you do to take control of your blood pressure? Well, first of all, you are what you eat. So it starts with your food. So here are the top 10 foods to start reducing your blood pressure. And guess what? Most people don't actually know about this list. When was the last time you saw a healthcare worker that gave you exactly what you needed to eat to start lowering your blood pressure today? The thing is, even the president's physicians may not know the list. Imagine having a personal physician come to your home and check your blood pressure and it's 198/98. The next day it's 200/104. And the next day it's 204/100. Now, would you fire that physician that tells you to just watch and wait? Or would you ask if there's anything that you could do with your diet, with your lifestyle, or with medications to lower that number? Now, if you go to any American emergency room, that physician would urge you to take a medication to lower that number before they bless you to go home. I would urge you to take medication, and then they'll probably give you a prescription to take home. But did you know that 50% of people will eventually fail a single drug treatment for a high blood pressure? Now, of course, after your emergency room visit, you will be relieved that you caught it on time. But did you know that 75% of people with high blood pressure don't have it under control? So what's the problem? Well, there's actually 3 problems. Number 1, blood pressure medication is just a temporary band-aid for a lifestyle problem. Number 2, there's no magic pill to fix a person's lifestyle. And number 3, even when doctors prescribe expensive medications, many people don't like to take it. Now, if you have high blood pressure, then you should really know about flax seeds. Take a look at this bottle. This is really brown gold, and I usually keep it in a jar and I vacuum seal it to preserve its freshness. My mother-in-law is in her 90s, and she's been eating flax seeds since I first met her, which was roughly about 30 years ago. And even people who ate flaxseed muffins can drop their diastolic pressure by 7 points. Now, she just crushes this up and sprinkles it on her oatmeal. Now, 7 points doesn't sound like a lot, but what if I told you it actually results in 46% fewer strokes and 29% fewer heart disease cases over time? In reality, some of our blood pressure medications, like calcium channel blockers, especially one called amlodipine, they may only reduce your blood pressure by just 8 points. But unlike blood pressure medications, when you eat whole food flax seeds, you also get a ton of side benefits, which include lower cholesterol, lower triglyceride, lower blood sugars, and lower inflammation. Oh, did I mention that you can also cure your constipation? And as an added bonus, flax seeds have anti-cancer properties. Show me a blood pressure medication, or for that matter, any prescription medication that can give you all those benefits. You can't, because they don't exist. When you eat a medication, it targets one pathway. A calcium channel blocker blocks your calcium channels. You need calcium channels for your muscles to contract, and that's how it lowers your blood pressure. High blood pressure is caused by the blood vessel wall smooth muscles contracting, and it's so tight that it chokes off blood flow. But your heart is also a muscle, and that's why when you take a calcium channel blocker, it can also slow down your heart rate, which makes it more difficult to compensate when you're exercising. Now, if you can't contract your muscles, you also won't be able to contract your blood vessels. And that's why you may be seeing some ankle swelling, because some of that fluid goes down with gravity. You may also get constipated because you have muscles called smooth muscles that contract your intestines to help help squeeze that poop out. And as a result, some people feel very tired, or they have irregular heartbeats, or they have poop pluggers, or they may have headaches and lightheadedness. All of these side effects make sense because when you're a drug, you are abnormally blocking what your body wants to normally do. You have high blood pressure for a reason. It's trying to compensate for something that's going on, and it's trying to keep up your blood flow. And this is why when you change your diet, you may improve your blood pressure or you may make it worse, depending on what you eat or drink. And I'm sure you probably have noticed that your blood pressure may spike more after you go out to eat. Now, many people, when they go out, they like to buy a specialty drink. And you may be one of those people, or you may know people who likes to eat sugary, sweetened beverages. 63% of our fellow Americans drink some beverage with added sugar. And I'm sure you also know that it's not healthy, but you still like to do it. But did you know that sugar-sweetened beverages may keep you in debt? If you think about it, if you spend $7 a day on a drink every day, that's like $210 in a month, which is over $2,500 a year in financial debt. And that's not even including the medical care costs for high blood pressure or diabetes caused from excess added sugar. But if you instead invested the money of maybe 3 drinks a week, that could add up to hundreds of thousands of dollars in your bank account over time. Blood pressure is one of the most misunderstood metrics out there. It's like the Goldilocks of your cardiovascular system. Not too high, not too low, but just right. And the problem is blood pressure isn't static. It changes throughout the day. And when you're at rest and happy, it's lower. When you're exercising intensely or angry or scared, it naturally spikes. And unlike blood sugar spikes, where we really don't know how to interpret that, we know that blood pressure spikes are very damaging to your blood vessels. A chronic high spike will super duper that damage. Now, there is a huge disconnect between what doctors think are important and what people actually value. High blood pressure is like investments. It's too abstract for most people to understand. But I think that most people understand that blood is life, but they don't appreciate the term blood pressure. Blood pressure is like a credit card debt. A couple of my kids are old enough to have a credit card now, and one of them actually forgot to pay a monthly minimum balance. Now, anyone with a credit card knows that when you don't pay your monthly minimum balance, the credit card company puts an astronomical interest on everything you owe them. But what's worse is that it dings your credit report. Now, if you have a bad credit report, that lowers your credit score, and not only will you have problems getting a loan in the future, but you may not get you rent housing. Credit card debt is like high blood pressure. Most of the time, it's out of sight, and so it's out of mind until you have a catastrophic event. And when you have high blood pressure, you're actually living on borrowed time. And the longer your blood pressure goes out of control, well, the higher your risk of having some kind of catastrophic health outcome. Now, if you're watching this video, you want to improve your health. And there is no improving your health unless you get your blood pressure normal. High blood pressure is the key to all chronic illnesses, and your body will try to compensate as much as it can. And this is why everybody has different blood pressure results. And this is also why it's important to normalize your blood sugars and blood cholesterol. Because in the end, abnormal blood sugars and blood cholesterol, they're basically a marker of high blood pressure to come. So everything I eat is an attempt to help my blood pressure stay normally low. Here is a chart of normal. And half of you watching this video, you have high blood pressure, whether you know it or not. And just like a credit card debt, if you don't check, you're not going to know you're in debt. And having debt will damage your financial health. High blood pressure is worse than credit card debt because it also taxes you on your health. Frankly, if you don't have your health, you can't work, so you're not going to make any income. And number 2, if you're sick, you're going to have to pay for that health care too. And if you've ever paid for any medical bills, you know that it's just one catastrophic event from going bankrupt, unless you have good health insurance. And having health insurance is also not a guarantee because insurance companies are in it for money. I mean, the goal is not to pay out, right? And have you seen how expensive drug costs are, even with health insurance? Now, my goal is not to have to use my health insurance. And that's why I concentrate my efforts on my lifestyle. So number 2 is hibiscus tea. This is hibiscus tea that I bought. It's actually a flower, a bright red flower, the color of cranberry. Now, people around the world enjoy this antioxidant-rich drink that can lower blood pressure by about 6 points. Now, these may look like tiny little little changes, but these points all add up. The thing is, when you're talking about tiny spaces, even tiny changes can significantly reduce and help your health. And when you can reduce that pressure by even 5 points, you can reduce stroke risk by 14%, fatal heart attacks by 9%, and overall not making it by 7%. Believe it or not, hibiscus tea was put on a head-to-head trial with Captopril and was just as effective as the starting dose of Captopril. Now, some of you may not believe that foods actually reduce blood pressure. And if you think about it, what did people do before we had blood pressure medications? They weren't invented until the 1950s. I mean, really, they just sat around and probably twiddled their thumb. It's only been less than 100 years since we've had the explosion of medications. But we have ancient civilizations have lived well into their 90s without any exposure to our modern medications. And unlike modern day cardiologists, the old cardiologists, like in the 1940s, they didn't have the arsenal of tools to lower your blood pressure through medication. I'm sure if they did, they would certainly have offered it to our president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who actually suffered a catastrophic stroke from high blood pressure. Now, it wasn't like overnight he got it. FDR had high blood pressure for decades before it finally got to him. And since they didn't have medications, what did they do for the president? Well, they watched and waited. Oh, and they told him, don't do anything irritable, rest after lunch, get a massage, get some UV light, take a laxative, and avoid straining. Yeah, that's really practical for a president involved in World War II. Even if he wasn't in charge of the war, I don't think it would make a dent with his systolic blood pressure over 200. The scariest thing about it is that he didn't know he had high blood pressure. He didn't know it was a problem. He didn't have any symptoms, even though he was always tired. And eventually one day he had a massive headache, which was a symptom of a massive brain bleed or hemorrhagic stroke, and he didn't make it. Now, we have come a long way since FDR's time. In fact, that event warned America we have to take atherosclerosis seriously. And since that event, we invested so much money into figuring out how we can better treat high blood pressure. And this is why we have so many medications now to help people who have acute high blood pressure. But ultimately, diet and exercise is a must if you want to fix it. Now, FDR's physician, they too tried diet, but they only got it partially right. They had him avoid some of the foods that can elevate blood pressure. But the thing is, you also have to eat the antidote. You have to eat foods that can lower your blood pressure. And that's why number 3 is super important, leafy greens like arugula. Now, arugula is not your average leafy green. It is a number 1 superfood if you want to lower your blood pressure because it's high in nitric oxide. In fact, it is one of the highest nitric oxide containing plants. Now, nitric oxide is a key antidote to help your blood vessels relax without creating a whole cascade of negative effects like blood pressure medications. And this is because nitric oxide works locally, right at the places you need. Now, have you ever heard of nitroglycerin? That's a medication that we give to people who have chest pain due to coronary arteries. It relieves the chest pain because it helps people open up their coronary arteries. It's like releasing the gates of a dam to allow water to flow. Viagra also works the same way. It boosts nitric oxide signaling to promote blood flow to treat impotence. But we also give Viagra to people with pulmonary hypertension, and it works the same way. And if you're having high blood pressure, you're probably not having enough nitric oxide, and therefore your arteries continue to be constricted. They're tight, and they choke off blood flow. And if it was just one area, well, that body part will turn purple and then black. But chances are when you have this condition in one area, you're going to have it everywhere, including in your chest, your heart. And that increases your chances of having a heart attack. And just by eating antioxidant-rich foods, you can boost your nitric oxide synthase to help your body make more nitric oxide.
Hi, friends. I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes, and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
And this is why number 4 and number 5 are so helpful when it comes to beets and beet greens. Now, athletes are very into biohacking with their diet and lifestyle. And really, athletes are no different. They're made out of the same hardware as we are. So we also need to biohack. They want a competitive edge. I just want to live better and live longer. And this is why I try to eat beets. Now, drinking a cup of beet juice daily for 4 weeks, well, that can reduce people's blood pressure by 8 points. And of course, when you stop eating these foods, your blood pressure will go right back up. Just like if you stop taking your medications, it'll go right back up. If you had the perfect body, like when you were born, it wasn't contaminated with all the toxins in our air and in our food and our water, so we didn't have to work as hard to keep it functioning right. But no one has a perfect body because we don't have perfect food, we don't have perfect air, and we don't have perfect water. And your body is aging just like your car. The more you use it, the more effort you got to put in to keep it running. Now, if you have an unleaded car, would you ever put a little bit of diesel in your unleaded gas tank? What if the gas station ran out of unleaded gas? Would you ever make an exception and just fill it up a little bit with diesel? No, because you know that little bit is going to cause serious damage to your car. And that's the same concept with food. If you eat bad food, it will affect your metabolism. And this is also the same concept with blood pressure. Is it okay to be close to unleaded? No, you have to be unleaded. So it's not okay to be close to normal blood pressure. In reality, these slight elevations can lead to long-term damage. And where you want to be is low normal. But at least normal should always be achieved. And if you're not there, you're just going to have to work harder. And I get it. We're all tired of working hard. And every day your brain has to sleep because it's so tired of working. I have to sleep too. But your poor heart, it can never take a break. It's on call 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It works harder than physicians. So whenever your blood pressure fluctuates and becomes high, well, that just makes your heart pump harder. Your heart has to work so hard because it has pushed through those tight little narrow channels from high blood pressure. Have you ever drank a boba drink and the boba got stuck in the straw? I've done that several times, and every time that used to happen to me, I never had another straw, so I couldn't just switch it out. I had to try to blow the boba out of the straw. It's not easy when it gets stuck. And this is your heart pumping against the grain. So people with high blood pressure, they have hypertrophy of the heart muscle. And this would be okay if you got more blood to that hypertrophic muscle, but the coronary arteries, they don't grow. So you then increase your risk of having a heart attack. And of course, some people don't believe that their diet affects their blood pressure. In reality, diet is everything. This is why it's super important to eat basil like the Italians. I got introduced to basil because of bruschetta, an Italian appetizer made out of 5 basic ingredients: tomatoes, basil, balsamic vinegar, and a splash of olive oil on top of a baguette. It is delicious. You guys have to try it. My son, he loves basil. He will just eat the basil as it, like lettuce. In fact, he'll eat it without any dressing. And the reason why basil helps reduce blood pressure is because it's rich in nitric oxide. And it also has a ton of other antioxidants. But there's many herbs that have antioxidants and nitric oxide. And this is why I also eat cilantro, which is another staple in my diet. Now, in our family, we eat a fusion diet. Some days we eat Asian, some days we eat European, like Italian, and other days we eat Mexican. Tomatoes with cilantro, onions, some peppers. Well, that's the basic recipe of a salsa. Then you add a squeeze of lime, and if you want a little bit of fat, you add a little bit of olive oil. That is delicious. But I can understand why herbs don't appeal to people. It's a little spicy, especially cilantro. But when you eat for your health, sometimes you got to retrain your palate. But in the meantime, you can always eat something bland like butter lettuce number 8. That also has a good amount of nitric oxide. But you do miss out on the other beneficial antioxidants unique to each herb, unless you eat them. Now, if you want something that tastes a little bit sweeter, then go for Swiss chard, like number 9. You can eat that raw, like a baby Swiss chard. It's delicious with your salad. Or you can try it stir-fried. Usually the big leaves, I would try to stir-fry, or I'd put it in soups. And Swiss chard actually has more nitric oxide than beets. And no, you can't drink vegetable juice like V8 to replace this list. You'd have to drink like 19 quarts of V8 a day, which isn't going to be healthy. Now, you may be wondering what my friend did to lower her blood pressure by 40 points within 30 minutes. And no, she didn't take a blood pressure medication. Whenever she gets high blood pressure, she walks up and down her steps 20 times. But she didn't start doing that until she ended up in the emergency room one day with a massive headache and discovered that she had high blood pressure. She's, of course, been eating out and eating too many refined foods and too much saturated fat from overeating meat. Now, she texted me the same day, and I reminded her that good blood pressure is a daily effort through diet and exercise. Also reminded her to check her blood pressure multiple times a day. Until she did that, she didn't realize that her blood pressure actually fluctuated throughout the day. So when it starts to creep up, she would just start exercising, and within 30 minutes, it would come down. So it's important to check your own blood pressure. I have here a blood pressure meter that I bought for home use. Now, this is actually a common brand that many cardiologists like because it's been tested and found to be reliable. So you really want to get something that says it's been clinically proven to be accurate. I'm going to open this box. This is what my blood pressure machine looks like. You have a start button that you would press start when you want to increase when you take your blood pressure. But you really don't want to do that until you put this on your arm. Now, there is a way to put this on your arm to measure more accurate blood pressures. So when you have a blood pressure cuff, you can have an arrow or a marker to tell you where it needs to touch your artery. Okay, so you have a brachial artery in your arm, and you really need to line this up to your artery. This is the antecubital fossa, so like the joint between your forearm and your arm. So you're going to line this up to this artery. You want your arm to be at a level to your heart. The instructions are to rest and to sit around, but honestly, I don't think that's reliable. You need to know your blood pressure when you're at rest, when you're walking around, after you walk around, and even when you're laying down sometimes. So in different postures, positions, you want to know that it's never abnormally high or abnormally low if you're symptomatic, right? So I'm going to press this button and show you this blood pressure meter. Usually you're not supposed to be talking when you take your blood pressure. I just want to do normal life activity to know that my blood pressure isn't going to be too high. It is squeezing pretty tight. My hand's turning kind of red from it. And I'm talking. You're not supposed to be talking because they want you at rest. But really, you should know what your blood pressure is when you're talking, when you're not talking, when you're angry, when you're sad. So to know how these emotions actually change your blood pressure, because any kind of high blood pressure spike is not going to be good for you, right? So this is my blood pressure. It's 97/68, which is very normal. And generally speaking, my blood pressure is in the 90s because I exercise. And exercise is the number one way to change your blood pressure. Now, we've talked about quite a few foods in which you can lower your blood pressure today. But the reality is you're going to be hungry if all you ate was the foods that I just talked about. And this is where eating some whole grains, 3 portions a day, could work, as well as water pills, and avoid the nasty electrolyte side effects of water pills. Or you can also avoid the elevated risk of breast cancer and calcium channel blockers, or you can avoid the lethargy or impotence associated with beta blockers, or the life-threatening swelling problems called angioedema with ACE inhibitors. And unlike medication, foods have side benefits. Eating whole grains, it also lowers your risk of diabetes, lowers your risk of heart disease, lowers your risk of colon cancer, and can help you lose weight. But the problem is many people get whole grains confused with refined grains. Whole grains means the bran and germ are intact. Refined grains are just the endosperm, the starch part. And when you separate the carbohydrate which start endosperm from the bran and then the germ, well, you're removing the fiber and the protein that was in the bran and the germ, which creates an abnormally high burden of carbohydrates or sugars for your body to digest. And your body just can't digest that well if you're overeating it. And it's worse when you remove the water and then you mill it into a flour and then you eat it dehydrated like a bread or cookie. But even if you eat refined grains wet like white rice, you can actually increase your risk of diabetes by 17%. And it just takes 1 serving. But just replacing 1/3 of a serving a day of a whole grain instead of white rice can drop your risk by 16%. Now, some grains are more beneficial than others. And if you want to learn more about that, check out the next video.